Cassidy Jones was 8 years old, and probably the biggest liar I have ever met. She always sat in the back of Mrs. Asher's third grade class, and only spoke up when she felt that enough attention wasn't being paid to her. We had grown used to her dubious claims. It had become so commonplace, in fact, that most of the students didn't even bother making fun of her anymore. There wasn't any use. For every outrageous lie you managed to unravel, she would come ready with another one. My dad has a stash of money buried in the basement of our house. You could buy a whole other house with it all. Yesterday, I was in my backyard and I saw a big snake slithering through the woods. It was 8 feet long and 2 feet around. I looked in the teacher's lounge the other day and saw Mr. Ross kissing Mrs. Paulson. Needless to say, no one really paid attention to her. Her lies might have worked had we been a few years younger, but we were almost entering 4th grade by that point. We knew enough about the world by then to take almost everything she said with a grain of salt. One day, Cassidy was late to school. We whispered around the classroom. She was never late to class. About 10 minutes after we began, she walked in, looking exhausted. She sat next to me in the back row so naturally, I had to ask her on behalf of the entire class, "Why were you late? You never are." Cassidy smiled as she set her backpack down. "I got carried away talking to my new friend." A few of our classmates snickered. Cassidy had few, if any, friends. "Who?" I asked. "The sun." The whole class went dead quiet at these words. Someone sitting nearby asked, "What do you mean, the sun?" "I told you. I climbed my ladder to the sun and sat with him in his room." This kind of lying was unprecedented, even for Cassidy. Up until that point, they had been far-fetched, but not overly impossible. Now she was telling us she had a ladder that led to the sun in her closet. We wanted to press for more, but at that moment, Mrs. Asher walked in. We had to wait until recess. "Give me a break, Cassidy. That can't possibly be true," Logan told her later that day. Cassidy shook her head and grinned. "It's true. He just appeared a few days ago. Every time I want to visit, I just stand in my closet, and his ladder comes down. I climb up and sit there with him, talking. If I get cold, he gives off heat. If I get scared of the dark, he burns brighter to chase the shadows away." The funny thing was, Cassidy wouldn't let this lie drop. She usually went on talking about a new one once every day or two, but it had been over a week, and she still continually updated us on her and her friendship with the sun. It was a few weeks after the story was first told that Cassidy passed out invitations to her birthday party for that coming weekend. In all honesty, none of us would have gone. No one really wanted to be known as Cassidy's only friend. However, it was common knowledge that her parents were rich, and therefore her party was bound to have expensive gifts, or at the very least an interesting house to look at. So that Saturday, about 10 of us showed up for her 9th birthday. She tried to introduce us to her parents, but her dad was working in his office and her mom had locked herself in her room. The cake was a huge chocolate rectangle with overly sweet icing, the kind they sell at grocery stores like Safeway or Costco. No one really wanted to eat it, so we kind of just sat around watching TV. I was almost falling asleep when an idea popped into my head. I asked Cassidy where the bathroom was, and she pointed me up the stairs. When I reached the top, instead of turning right towards the bathroom, I turned left, towards the door of Cassidy's room. If she had been carrying on with the sun story for as long as she had, there had to be something good in there. Once inside, I pulled open the door to her closet. I stood there for a few seconds, expecting something to happen, but nothing did. I looked all around the interior space, but only clothes and a jumbled mess of shoes. Sighing, I turned to go when I accidentally stepped on a stuffed animal that was lying in the doorway, which emitted a loud squeak. Somewhere overhead, I heard the pattering of feet, followed by a heavy, dull thud. The sound of squeaking hinges came from behind me, and I turned around. There on the ceiling of Cassidy's closet, a trap door opened just a crack. Through the maybe 3 inches of space, I could see 2 large orbs of light floating over a thin line, which soon opened itself to reveal a mouth. Before I could do anything, a heat wave burst from the space, burning my eyes. Crying out, I stumbled back out of the closet as I heard the door swing shut behind me. I clumsily walked back downstairs and used the phone to call my mom to come pick me up early. Apparently, most of the other kids had done the same because only about 3 of my classmates remained. As I was walking out the door, I turned and apologized to Cassidy for not believing her. It was about a month after that weekend that we began to notice a change in her. She wasn't as attention-seeking or happy as usual. Sure, we all didn't really want to be friends with her, but we had developed a strange sort of affection for her outlandish stories. I stopped her during lunch one day and asked her what was wrong. My parents had been fighting a lot over the past month. Dad works late and Mom barely talks to him when he's home. They don't pay attention to me either. The only time they seem to care about me is during dinner. I did my best to comfort her, but the years I had gotten caught up in teasing her hindered me. The best I could do was try and tell her that everything was going to be alright. I don't think she believed me. This continued on for another 3 weeks or so. Every day she seemed to get more and more withdrawn and depressed. I did my best to talk to her more and make her feel better. The stories of fights between her parents got more frequent. One day, Cassidy arrived at school with an unexpected smile plastered on her face. She sat down at her desk, ready to learn, and even started telling her strange stories again. I saw her during recess and asked her what had caused such a shift in her mood. Mom and Dad are getting a divorce. They don't care about me. All they want to do is divide up all the things they own. I told the son about all this and he said I could stay with him in his room while they get everything together. My stomach dropped. Cassidy, are you sure that's a good idea? I tried to make my trepidation obvious, but it seemed lost on her. It isn't going to be forever, just until Mom and Dad get their divorce taken care of. At this, she walked away. I considered running after her again and asking whether she really thought it was a good idea, but in the end I didn't. I tried to rationalize what I saw in her closet that day, telling myself it was just a figment of my imagination or a hallucination caused by tiredness. I'm not sure if I believed myself. As she walked out the double doors of the school towards her mom's car, she turned and waved at me. One last time. Waving back, I watched as the car sped off. She wasn't at school the next day, or the one after that. On the third day, Mrs. Asher made a tearful announcement that stopped me dead in my tracks. Cassidy was dead. Throughout the whole school day, I sat looking at Cassidy's empty desk. I found it very hard to believe that someone who had seemed so happy could be dead all of a sudden. I felt numb and sick and sorry for the years I had spent joining my classmates in their ridicule. Logan's dad was captain of the police force. He was handling her case, and Logan had apparently overheard all the details. I didn't really want to find out what happened, but in the end, my curiosity won out. Cassidy had a ladder to the attic space inside her closet. On the day of her death, she hadn't come down to breakfast. Her mom went to her room and saw that it was down. Climbing up, she found her huddled in a corner, all black and red, and burned to a crisp. There were scorch marks all along the window frame and down the tree right outside, followed by footprints of burnt grass leading into the woods behind the house.
Did you enjoy tonight's story? There's more to come soon. Feel free to subscribe so you won't miss a thing. You can also follow me on Twitter for updates. And if you prefer BitChute over YouTube, I can be found there too. Links down below. Stay safe, listeners.